The night was thick and heavy, a wet blanket over the Mississippi bottomlands. The year was 1840, and the cotton at Chapel Hill Plantation was not yet ripe, but the air was ripe with something else, a tense, watchful silence. In the quarter, a line of crumbling cabins crouched behind the big house, no light showed. But in one of them, a small figure was not asleep. Laila, who was 6 years old but looked younger, sat on the dirt floor, her back against the rough-hewn wall. Her mother's worn shawl was pulled tight around her thin shoulders. In her lap, cupped in her small, calloused hands, was a book. It was not a real book, not anymore. It was a thing of scraps, its cover long gone, its pages soft and pulpy with age and damp. She had found it in a trash heap behind the master's house, thrown out with broken plates and chicken bones. She could not read the words. They were just strange, spidery scratches. But the pictures were a window into another world.
Did they see me?
There was a bird, large and white,
this way.
with wings spread wide as if it were flying right off the page.
Rest now. I'll watch over you.
There was a river, wider than
Thank
the
you, my
Mississippi, with boats that had no oars and no men straining at them. It was a world of freedom, and Laila traced the bird's wing with her finger, her lips moving in a silent, awed whisper. Suddenly, the hounds in the yard started to bay. It was a sound Laila knew in her bones, a sound of pursuit, of terror, of men on horses with ropes and guns. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She shoved the book deep into the folds of the shawl and closed her eyes, pressing her back harder against the wall as if she could melt into it. She whispered a prayer her mother had taught her, though she wasn't sure who listened. Footsteps. Heavy, crunching steps on the hard-packed earth outside. A shadow fell across the crack in the door, blocking the faint starlight. It was Mr. Davis, the overseer. Laila could tell by the wide-brimmed hat and the thick, solid shape of him. He wasn't looking for her. He was looking for her mother. Josie, his voice boomed, a voice that needed no wit to carry its threat. Stop your shirking and get out here. Laila's mother, Josie, was not asleep. She was on her narrow pallet in the corner, her eyes open, staring at the darkness. At the sound of her name, she didn't flinch. She just closed her eyes for a second, as if gathering strength from a deep, private well. Then she rose. She was only 30, but her body was bowed from years in the cotton fields, her face etched with a weariness that had nothing to do with sleep. She looked at Laila. In the pitch black, she couldn't see her daughter, but she knew she was there, watching, listening. Laila felt her mother's gaze like a touch, a mix of fierce love and profound fear. Then Josie turned and walked out the door, pulling it shut behind her. The door closed with a soft thud. Laila was alone in the suffocating darkness. She heard the low, threatening rumble of Mr. Davis's voice, and her mother's voice, higher, pleading. She couldn't make out the words, but she understood the language. It was the same language she had heard a year ago, when her older brother, Elijah, had been taken away. It was the language of ownership, of power, of a grief that had no name. That night, Laila waited. She waited for her mother to come back, her small body rigid with tension, the secret book pressed against her heart like a talisman. The hounds eventually fell silent. The voices stopped. But the silence that followed was worse. Laila waited until the first, pale light of dawn crept through the chinks in the cabin wall, painting thin stripes on the dirt floor. The door did not open. Her mother did not come back. Laila had been born in that very cabin, in the spring of 1834. It was planting time, and Master Thomas Williams, a lean, quiet man with the perpetually worried look of a debtor, had been more preoccupied than usual. Josie had been allowed only a few hours out of the fields to give birth, tended by an old woman named Auntie Pearl who had delivered every baby on the plantation for 30 years. Josie had already had 3 children. 2 had lived, Elijah, who was 10 and already worked as a water boy in the fields, and little Sarah, who was just 3 and stayed with her mother. But the plantation's wealth was cotton, and cotton needed hands. When Laila was born, Josie was given 2 weeks, barely enough time to heal, before she was back in the fields, the newborn tied to her back with a strip of cloth, the hot sun beating down on them both. As Laila grew, she learned her mother in glimpses, the flash of her hands pulling cotton balls, the curve of her back as she hoed the long rows, the sound of her humming a low, mournful tune at night. She nursed at her mother's breast, but she rarely felt the comfort of her arms. Josie had no time for comfort. She was a machine for work, a body that picked cotton, pulled weeds, and, at night, washed the master's linens by the light of a tallow candle. Laila learned to walk by holding onto the rough-hewn table leg in the cabin. She learned to talk by mimicking the older children. Her playground was the edge of the field, where she would sit and watch her mother, tiny, distant figure in a sea of white. Her older sister, Sarah, would sometimes play with her. Their toys were not dolls, but corn husks tied with twine, or smooth pebbles they pretended were eggs. When Laila was 4, Master William's debts caught up with him. A sheriff's sale was announced. Slaves who were considered surplus or too young to be fully productive were to be sold.
I'll watch over you.
Josie fell to her knees in front of the master's horse, begging him not to take her children. Master Williams did not look at her. He looked at his account book, at the columns of numbers, and saw only a way to pay his creditors. Elijah, now 12 and strong, was the first to go. Laila remembered the day clearly. Her brother, with his bright eyes and a smile that still held a glimmer of boyhood, was pulled from their cabin. He cried out, "Mama," as they dragged him towards the wagon. But Josie was held back by 2 other men. That night, Josie made no sound. She sat in the darkness, and Laila felt her mother's tears on her own face, but heard nothing. The silence was louder than any scream. 85, Laila was put to work. She was too small to pick cotton, so she was given a job as a water girl. A large, heavy gourd, almost half her size, was her constant companion. She would fill it at the stream and then walk the long rows, carrying it to the parched, sweating men and women. The sun would bake her head until it swam, her bare feet would blister on the scorched earth, but if she stumbled and spilled even a drop, Mr. Davis's whip would find her small back. Mr. Davis was a different kind of cruel from Master Williams. Master Williams was cruel through indifference, through his cold, businesslike treatment of human beings as property. Mr. Davis was a thick-necked, red-faced man with small, mean eyes that were always wet with whiskey. He enjoyed the power. He enjoyed the sound of his own voice, shouting curses, and the crack of his whip. He was the system made flesh, a man whose only purpose was to extract every ounce of labor from the bodies in his charge. Laila quickly learned the most important lesson of her young life: survival lay in silence. She watched the other slaves. The ones who talked back, who complained of thirst or exhaustion, who groaned under the weight of their sacks, they were the ones Mr. Davis noticed. They were the ones who got the lash. The ones who kept their heads down, their mouths shut, and their eyes on the cotton. They survived.
See me?
Laila became one of the silent ones. She would walk with the heavy gourd, her eyes fixed on the ground, her small face a blank mask. She spoke to no one. She made no friends. She simply existed, a tiny, tireless machine carrying water. But inside her silent head, another world thrived. She watched the birds that soared freely above the fields, unburdened by masters or cotton sacks. She studied the clouds, learning to tell which ones meant rain and which ones meant only more sun. She listened to the whispered stories the older slaves told at night, tales of Africa, of a land where lions were kings and rivers spoke, of spirits that lived in the trees and could help you if you knew how to ask. Her mother, Josie, was the best storyteller, and Laila would drink in every word. These stories were her only wealth, her only escape. Laila's gift was not loud or showy. It was the gift of observation. In a world where being noticed was dangerous, she had perfected the art of watching without being seen. She could tell by the sound of Mr. Davis's footsteps if he was drunk or sober. She knew the exact pitch of Master Williams's horse's hooves on the hard-packed road.
They're turning this
way.
She
knew which women were with child before they showed, which men were sickening with fever, and when the first frost would come by the way the spiders built their webs. When she was 7, something happened that would shape the rest of her life. She was near the kitchen, fetching water, when she heard a strange, rhythmic sound. She crept closer and peered through a crack in the kitchen wall. Inside, Mrs. Elizabeth Williams, the master's wife, was teaching her young daughter, Mary, to read. The window was open, and Laila could see them clearly. Mrs. Elizabeth was pointing to marks on a page. "This," she said, "is the letter B, B for bird. Can you say that, Mary? B. Little Mary repeated the sound, and Layla's mind seized upon it. Marks on a page, they made sounds. They meant something. They were a secret code. For the rest of the day, Layla's mind churned. That night, she asked her mother, "Mama, what is reading?" Josie's face went rigid with fear. She grabbed Layla's arm, her grip tight. "Don't you ever ask that," she hissed, her voice a fierce whisper. "That's not for us. You hear me, child? That's the white folks' magic. If they catch you even thinking about it, they'll beat you. They'll sell you away. You forget you ever heard that word." Layla was frightened by her mother's reaction, but she couldn't forget. The secret of the marks on the page was planted in her mind, a seed that would not die. She began to watch Mary's lessons whenever she could, hiding in the bushes near the kitchen window. She learned the shape of A and the sound of B. She learned that C looked like a crescent moon. One day, her patience was rewarded. In the trash heap, she saw it, a book. A real book, thrown away. It was tattered and stained, missing its cover, but the pages were full of those magical marks. She snatched it and hid it in her shawl, her heart pounding with the thrill of a great and terrible secret. That night, under her thin blanket, she took it out.
Did they see me?
She couldn't read the words, but she studied the
Turning
pictures,
this way.
and she traced the letters with her finger, memorizing their shapes.
Rest now. I'll watch over
The
you.
book became her most
you,
prized
dear.
possession, her portal to another world. Sarah, Layla's sister, was 3 years older. She was the opposite of Layla in every way. Where Layla was silent and watchful, Sarah was talkative and playful. She laughed easily, a bright, infectious sound that was rare and precious in the quarter. The two sisters were close. Sarah would tease Layla, trying to make her smile, and sometimes she would succeed. They would work side by side in the fields, and Sarah would tell Layla stories to make the time pass faster. But Sarah's brightness made her a target. Mr. Davis disliked her. He said she was uppity, that her laughter was a sign of laziness and disrespect. When Layla was 8, it happened. Sarah had been working hard all day, but in the afternoon heat, she had paused for just a moment, leaning on her hoe, her eyes closed against the sun. Mr. Davis saw her. He rode over on his horse, his face contorted with rage. He didn't say a word. He just
Did they
raised his
see
whip
me?
and brought it down on Sarah's
They're
back.
turning this way.
Sarah screamed. It was a sound of pure,
Rest now.
animal
I'll
pain.
watch over you.
Thank
She
you,
dropped
my
her hoe and ran, but Mr. Davis spurred his horse after her, the whip rising and falling. That night, Sarah was locked in the cotton gin, a small, windowless shed. The next week, Master Williams announced he was selling her. Josie begged again, falling to her knees, clutching at the master's boots. This time, Mr. Davis was there. He pulled Josie away and beat her himself, right there in the yard, in front of everyone. Layla watched it all. She watched her sister, her bright, laughing sister, be dragged away, screaming her name. Layla. Mama. She watched her mother, broken and bloody, being carried back to the cabin. And she made no sound. She shed no tears. Her silence deepened into something harder, a protective shell around a heart that was slowly turning to stone. That day, she made a pact with herself. She would never love anyone enough to feel this pain again. By the time she was 9, Layla was a skilled cotton picker. Her hands were small but nimble, and she could fill her sack faster than children twice her age. She always met her quota, never giving Mr. Davis a reason to notice her. But her very efficiency, her ghost-like silence, began to make him uneasy. He didn't trust what he couldn't understand. One day, exhausted and dizzy from the heat, Layla stumbled and dropped her water gourd. It hit a rock and cracked, the precious water soaking into the thirsty earth. Mr. Davis saw it. He rode over, his face a thundercloud. "You did that on purpose," he said, his voice low and dangerous. Layla shook her head, her eyes on the ground. He raised his whip. "Speak, girl. Why'd you do it?" Layla said nothing. She just stood there, a small, still figure, her jaw clenched. The whip came down. Once. Twice. 3 times. pain seared across her back, but Laila did not cry out. She would not give him the satisfaction.
Did they see me?
She bit down
They're
on her
turning
lips
this
so
way.
hard she tasted blood, but she made no sound.
Rest now.
Her
I'll watch
silence
over
was
you.
her only weapon,
Thank you, my
and she
dear.
wielded it with all her might. Finally, Davis stopped, breathing heavily. A flicker of something, frustration, confusion, maybe even a grudging respect, crossed his face. "Get out of my sight," he muttered, and rode away. But from that day on, Laila knew he was watching her more closely. She was a problem he hadn't yet solved. That winter, a new slave was brought to the plantation. His name was Samuel, and he was sold from a place further east. He was an older man, perhaps 50, with a straight back and eyes that held a deep, quiet calm. He was a blacksmith by trade, and Master Williams, seeing a way to increase his property's value, put him to work in the forge. Samuel noticed Laila. She was different from the other children. She never laughed, never played. She worked and was silent. One day, he saw her near the forge, and he caught a glimpse of something she quickly hid in her shawl. It was a book. He approached her slowly, his voice gentle.
Did they see me?
"What you got there, child?"
They're turning this way.
Layla's eyes widened with fear. She
Rest
clutched
now.
the shawl
I'll watch
tighter.
over you.
Thank
Samuel
you, my dear.
smiled, a warm, crinkling smile that reached his eyes. "Don't be scared. I ain't gonna hurt you. I seen a book. I used to know a little reading myself, a long time ago, when I was a boy." Layla's eyes widened further, this time with wonder. "You can read," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "A little," Samuel said. "You want me to teach you what I remember?" It was a dangerous offer, and they both knew it. If they were caught, the punishment would be severe. But the pull of that secret world was too strong for Laila to resist. She nodded. And so began their secret lessons. Every night, when the moon was right and the quarters were quiet, Laila would slip out of her cabin and creep to the forge. Samuel would have a small fire banked, its glow providing just enough light. He had a few precious things, a stub of a candle, a piece of charcoal, and a smooth, flat piece of wood. On the wood, he would draw letters with the charcoal, and Laila would trace them with her finger, sounding them out in a whisper. Laila was a natural. Her mind, starved for stimulation, soaked up the knowledge like dry earth soaks up rain. She learned the alphabet in weeks. Soon, she was sounding out simple words from her treasured book. Samuel would smile and pat her shoulder. "You got a gift, child," he would say. "Don't you ever let nobody take that from you." One night, as Laila was returning from the forge, she saw a light in the big house. It was in the master's study, a room she had only ever glimpsed from the outside. Curious, she crept closer and peered through the window. Master Williams was sitting at his desk, a quill in his hand. But he wasn't writing calmly. He would write a few lines, then scratch them out, then crumple the paper and throw it on the floor. His face was pale and drawn with worry. He looked like a man trapped. The next day, Laila overheard two house slaves talking. Master
Did they
Williams
see
was
me?
in deep debt again.
They're turning
He
this
might
way.
have to sell the plantation, and all the slaves with it.
Rest now.
The
I'll
news
watch
hit
over
Laila
you.
like a physical
Thank you,
blow.
my dear.
Her mother, Josie, was still alive, though her health was failing. And Samuel? Samuel was her only friend, her teacher. She told Samuel what she had heard. He nodded slowly, his face grave. "I figured as much. A man don't get that worried look for nothing. What are we going to do?" Laila asked, her voice trembling for the first time in years. Samuel looked at her, his old eyes holding a flicker of fire. "Sometimes, child, a body has to make their own way." Samuel told Laila his plan. He was going to run away. He was going to head north, follow the drinking gourd, find the people who would help him get to freedom. A place where there were no masters, no whips, no auctions. "And me?" Laila asked, her heart pounding. Samuel looked at her with deep affection. "You come with me, child. I ain't leaving you here." But Laila thought of
Did
her
they
mother.
see me?
Josie was weak now,
They're turning
coughing
this way.
often, growing thinner. Laila couldn't leave
Rest
her.
now. I'll watch over
She
you.
told Samuel
Thank
this.
you, my dear.
Samuel considered for a long moment. If you stay, they'll sell you both anyway, likely separate. At least if you run, you got a chance. All of you. Laila wrestled with the dilemma. Finally, she agreed to talk to her mother. That night, she told Josie everything, about Samuel, the secret lessons, the plan to escape. Josie's reaction was immediate and fierce. No, she hissed, grabbing Laila's arm. You ain't going nowhere. They catch you, they'll kill you. Or worse. Mama, Laila pleaded, her voice cracking, if we stay here, we'll die anyway. You're sick. They'll sell me. What do we have to lose? Josie stared at her daughter. She saw the intelligence in her eyes, the strength that had been forged in silence and pain. She saw a girl who was not a child anymore. Tears welled in her own eyes, tears of grief and fear and a flicker of desperate hope. Finally, she pulled Laila close, holding her tight for the first time in years. But their secret was not safe. Mr. Davis's suspicion of Laila had never faded. He had noticed her slipping away at night. One night, he followed her. He watched from the shadows as she entered the forge, saw the dim light, and heard the low murmur of voices. He crept closer and peered through a crack. He saw the old man and the girl, huddled over a piece of wood, tracing letters. The next morning, Samuel was dragged before Master Williams. Mr. Davis stood by, a smug look on his face, and told the master what he had seen. Samuel was accused of corrupting the girl, of teaching her things that would make her unfit for service. He was accused of plotting an escape. Master Williams, faced with this proof of disobedience, made a swift, brutal decision. Samuel was to be sold. Immediately. He was too valuable a blacksmith to kill, but too dangerous to keep.
Did they see
Laila
me?
watched in horror as Samuel was led
They're
away
turning
in
this way.
chains. She ran to him, but was held back.
Rest now. I'll watch over you.
Samuel turned and
Thank
looked
you,
at
my
her.
dear.
There was no fear in his eyes, only a deep, abiding peace. He smiled at her. Don't you give up, Laila, he called out. You remember what I taught you. The Lord is everywhere. You keep reading. You keep learning. You keep fighting. And you never, ever stop hoping. Samuel was taken away. Laila was alone again, more alone than she had ever been. Her mother was still there, but she was failing fast. That winter was the coldest anyone could remember. A damp, bone-chilling cold seeped into the cabins. Josie, already weakened by years of labor and heartbreak, fell ill with a terrible fever. She coughed constantly, a deep, racking cough that shook her whole body. She could not work. She lay on her pallet, burning with fever one moment and shivering uncontrollably the next. Laila did everything she could. She brought her water. She covered her with every scrap of cloth they owned.
Did they see me?
She sat by her side for hours,
They're turning this
holding
way.
her hand. But she had no medicine,
Rest
no proper
now.
food,
I'll watch
no
over
way
you.
to fight the
Thank you,
sickness.
my dear.
Mr. Davis came to the cabin door. He looked at Josie with contempt. If she can't work, she don't eat, he said. And you better be in them fields, girl, or you'll feel my whip. So Laila worked in the fields all day, her heart heavy with worry, and tended to her mother all night. She watched Josie fade, day by day, her face growing more gaunt, her eyes more distant. One night, Josie opened her eyes and looked at Laila with a clarity she hadn't had in days. She reached out a weak hand and touched Laila's face. Baby, she whispered, her voice a thread of sound. I'm going, now. Don't you cry for me. I'm going to a better place. You got to be strong. You got to live. You hear me? You live. Laila's tears fell freely. Mama, please don't leave me, she sobbed, all her carefully constructed walls crumbling. Josie smiled, a faint, peaceful smile. My strong girl, she breathed. And then her hand went limp, her eyes closed, and she was gone. Laila sat with her mother's body for a long time, holding her hand, until the cold of the morning seeped into the cabin. She had no one left. Nothing left. But in the deepest part of her, a small, hard flame of defiance flickered to life. After Josie was buried in a shallow, unmarked grave on the edge of the plantation, Laila made her decision. She had nothing to stay for. She would run. She remembered everything Samuel had told her, the North Star, the safe houses, the people called conductors. She had nothing to pack but her mother's shawl, a small piece of cornbread she had managed to hide, and her precious, tattered book. One moonless night, when the sky was thick with clouds and the hounds were quiet, she slipped out of the cabin. She didn't look back. She disappeared into the woods, a small, silent shadow. Her absence was discovered at dawn. Mr. Davis was furious.
Did they
He
see
set the
me?
hounds on her trail and mounted his
They're turning
horse,
this way.
leading a party of men. Laila heard the baying of the
Rest now.
dogs in the
I'll watch
distance and
over
her
you.
heart froze.
Thank you, my dear.
She ran, her small legs pumping, branches whipping at her face. She ran until she couldn't run anymore. She came to the bank of a river. It was wide and swollen with winter rain, the current swift and dark. The baying of the hounds was closer now, much closer. She could hear the shouts of the men. She was trapped. She stood on the bank, clutching her mother's shawl, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She looked at the churning water. She couldn't swim. This was the end. She closed her eyes. She thought of her mother's stories, of Samuel's gentle smile, of the free bird in her book. She whispered a final prayer. A hand grabbed her arm. Layla's eyes flew open. An old black man, his face weathered and kind, was pulling her away from the riverbank. "This way, child, quick," he hissed. He pulled her into a thicket of bushes and pushed her behind a large, moss-covered rock that concealed the entrance to a small cave.
Did they
He
see
shoved
me?
her inside and then quickly covered
They're
the
turning
entrance
this
with
way.
brush. Layla crouched in the darkness, trembling,
now. I'll
listening to
watch
the
over
sounds
you.
of the chase.
Thank you, my dear.
The hounds arrived at the riverbank, their baying confused. They had lost the scent at the water's edge. She heard Mr. Davis cursing, ordering the men to search both directions. The sounds went on for what felt like hours, but eventually, they faded away. The old man returned at dusk. He brought her a piece of cold biscuit and some water. He was a station master on the Underground Railroad, he explained. He had seen her being chased and had been waiting to help. He would take her to the next safe house. For weeks, Laila traveled north. She walked at night and hid by day, in barns, in root cellars, in the homes of strangers who risked everything to help her. She was hungry, cold, and terrified, but she never stopped. She never spoke. Her silence, once a shield, was now her armor. She observed everything, trusted no one but the conductors who passed her from hand to hand like a precious, dangerous secret. Finally, on a clear, cold night, she was led to the banks of the Ohio River. On the other side, she was told, was freedom. A man with a small boat rowed her across the dark, silent water. When she stepped out on the northern bank, she fell to her knees and pressed her face to the cold, free soil. "All right," she whispered, her voice thick. "All right. But we wait for winter. The nights are longer. And we go together. All three of us." In Ohio, Laila found work with a Quaker family who took her in. They were kind people who asked no questions and gave her food, shelter, and, most importantly, an education. Laila learned to read and write properly. She devoured books. She was a bright and eager student. As she grew, she became a teacher herself, first to the family's children, and then in a small school for other fugitives from slavery. She dedicated her life to helping others find the freedom she had found. She never married, never had children of her own. She kept her story locked
they
away
see
in
me?
her heart, private treasure too
They're turning
painful
this
to
way.
share. The years passed.
Rest
Civil
now.
War
I'll
came
watch
and
over
went.
you.
Thank you, my dear.
Slavery was abolished. America changed, but the scars remained. Laila grew old, a respected, quiet woman in her community. When she died, in her sleep, at a great age, they found an old, tattered book under her pillow. It was missing its cover, its pages soft and worn. No one knew what it was or where it came from. They buried it with her. Today, the Chapel Hill plantation is a museum. Tourists walk through the big house, admire the antique furniture, and take pictures of the live oaks draped with Spanish moss. The slave cabins are gone, torn down long ago, their foundations buried under years of soil and neglect. In the archives of the County Historical Society, there are census records from the 19th century. For Chapel Hill Plantation, the names of enslaved people are listed, but only by age and sex, never by name. Black female, age 10. Black male, age 25. They are statistics, not people. But in one census, from
Did they see
1840,
me?
there is a small anomaly.
They're turning this way.
The household of Thomas Williams is listed.
Rest
It
now.
includes his
I'll watch
family,
over you.
and then a list of
Thank
his
you, my
enslaved
dear.
property. The numbers don't quite add up. One knowledgeable historian, digging through the records years ago, noticed that the number of children listed was one less than the number of slave cabins would suggest. It was a small discrepancy, easily dismissed as a clerical error. But perhaps it was not an error. Perhaps, for 40 years, the Williams family hid one child from every census. Perhaps they hid Laila. Her name appears in no record. Her existence is documented in no official ledger. She is a ghost, a silence in the archive. But if you go to the banks of the river near where the old plantation once stood, on a quiet night, when the moon is hidden and the wind whispers through the trees, some say you can still see her, a small figure in a tattered shawl, holding a book, her eyes fixed on the distant northern star, waiting, watching, asking to be remembered. History is written by the victors, they say. But the silence of the forgotten speaks louder than any words. And in that silence, Laila's story, and the stories of millions like her, live on.